I go to police funerals, and we went to one in Long Island. I visited the family in Long Island. It's so dangerous. People don't realize the car, dark windows, pull over. He's a gentleman. Please pull over. Door opens. Guy comes out firing. They can't pull
Do it
out
in
the gun.
time. Yeah.
They still wouldn't have
It's
time.
every cop's worst nightmare.
They opened a door, and he was killed, and his partner was hurt. He was killed, and you don't even have an eighth of a second to think.
Quarter second is what the force science says that you can get rounds off, but that's not including reaction time. Things that reaction time are slowed down by is not being physically and mentally prepared. The worse in shape you are, the slower your reaction time is going to be. The less mentally resilient and mentally prepared that you are for an actual gunfight or use of force incident is going to slow you down. The more prepared you are, the better you are. The less prepared, the worse you are. And we know that cops are notoriously unprepared for this event. 80% are overweight or obese. 80%. Now, do you think that's going to make this more or less survivable?
And it is such a dangerous job. That in particular, think of it. You go up to a car, you don't know who's sitting there with a gun. And if they have a gun, you really don't have a chance. The door opens and bullets start firing out. And especially where they have the dark windows, where they have the darkened windows. It is such a dangerous profession. And it's very hard to get cops now because they're not given any backup. And you're right. They have an eighth of a second to make a decision that's going to change their life. If they make the wrong decision, they're going to end up on the front page of every newspaper in the country, and they're going to lose their house and their pension and their job, and their wife is going to be gone, and everything's
Absolutely.
going to be gone.
And here's another thing that people don't talk about. How many of them have PTSD?
So with all that, with the amount of error, the margin of error that we are allowed to have in law enforcement is very thin. Your margin for error in physical use of force is virtually zero. So you cannot make an error in that arena. You can't do it, right? Or you're going to be the next YouTube sensation, or you're going to go to jail, depending on where you work. There's going to be just a mob of crazy people that are going to right, wrong, or indifferent. If they don't like the optics of it, it doesn't matter what the case law says. Like, you're going to get railroaded for it. Now, how do you prevent that? So if you have more skills and competency, if you are in better shape, if you are able to train, even just physically, this is not even including defensive tactics, jiu-jitsu, that kind of stuff, shooting, not including that. Base level, if you are just in better shape and you are simply stronger, then you will have a much better chance of not needing to go to a lethal force incident. That's just how it goes. That's not saying that you shouldn't go to a lethal force incident. If you need to, you absolutely should, but you have no more tools. That's when you go to lethal force, when you're out of other options. If you are weaker, you have way less options to do things like fight people, chase people. You're out of options much faster if you're in worse shape. If you're obese and you are trying to wrestle a guy and you can't breathe, then you are going to have to jump to lethal force way faster than somebody that's in shape. And that is not acceptable. That is incompetent. That is lack of competency. And that breeds unprofessionalism. That breeds like all of these problems that we're seeing in law enforcement.
Probably most of them.
Yeah,
These guys are seeing people shot all the time.
Then we're talking about mental resilience here and mental strength. Okay. And if I'll say it every single time, if you are not focusing on your physical health, then you are not focusing on your mental health. And you can say it all you want, oh, mental health, but if physical strength and physical conditioning and aerobic work and nutrition are not included in that conversation, then you are just a walking time bomb for things like this.
I've talked to a ton of cops about it, and a lot of cops commit suicide. A lot of cops are deeply depressed.
But we have to give them back their dignity. We just have to give them back. You said it's so good.
We have to give ourselves back our dignity. And again, going back to that stat that 80% of us are obese or overweight, that is a lack of dignity for ourselves. And if we don't view that as important, then how in the fuck are any of these other people out here going to respect us and our ability to do our job, knowing full well that just by looking at us, we can tell like this guy cannot do his job. He is not professional. He is not competent. He has no skills.
You never hear anybody say that. You're never going to have it perfect. You're going to have a bad apple.
In everything, in every
Right.
profession.
But every time there's a bad apple, that gets massive publicity, and it taints everybody
But
else.
it's also this very irresponsible thing where people say defund the police, get rid of the police. Even Kamala Harris was a part of that. That it's a very stupid way to look at it. What you should do is fund the police. You should have better training. You should have cops that feel more appreciated. You should have something that helps mitigate this PTSD that all of them suffer through.
Right. She was.
Hit the nail on the head there. If you are better trained, if you are more competent, you have a much lower rate and lower risk of post-traumatic stress disorder, post-traumatic stress injury, right? That is because the frame on the front end is appropriate and is strong, right? That way, when it happens, not if it happens, but when it happens, your total view of the world isn't shattered. And that's very hard to make up for on the back end. All that said, bottom line is this. If you are lacking skills, lacking competence, lacking strength, that just needs to change. The margin for acceptable error in today's police work is virtually zero. And the easiest way, if you are one of the 80% that's overweight or obese, the easiest way to start climbing that mountain is one step at a time, right? A 90-day program that's going to focus on base strength, base nutrition, and first steps of becoming much more confident and competent in your job and your skills is the Tactical Advantage program. So that's open now. I would love to see you sign up. It's going to be limited to only 15 for this beta test, and it's going to be very affordable. So make sure that you message me immediately and we can get rocking and rolling. So let's get after it. Let's go.